Hi, everyone. I'm Don Saucier. I'm the Faculty Associate Director of the Teaching and Learning Center, and you have found your way to our professional development series. Very excited about that. Many of you are probably aware that our professional development series meets over the academic year on Wednesdays at noon in real time over Zoom. We also archive our events for asynchronous viewing on our webpage. So after this event, we're saying, oh my goodness, my colleagues need to see this. Well, you can point them to our webpage and it'll be posted up a little bit later today. So looking forward to doing that. If you attend enough of our events, you can earn a professional development certificate. And we have certificates that we give to GTAs as well as to faculty and staff. And my colleague will drop that into the chat here now. We also have the opportunity, if you're a faculty member, to potentially become a TLC fellow, which probably means you get to present in the TLC series next year. That information can be found at that same link. Couple other things to put on your radar. First of all, we have a TLC Hub. Our TLC Hub is a Teams channel by which we give out a lot of information. We give out, the information about our events coming up. We post the promo videos, those sorts of things. So if you're interested in that, we have a link that you can hit to ask to be invited to that Teams channel. We'll post that link at the end as well. I also want to put in your radar, this is a very cool thing. Rebecca Barrett Fox on our Salina campus has a writing group that she would like to invite all of us to potentially attend. Straw poll, not too many of us here, but how many of you have something you should be writing? I'm seeing some hands going up and a couple people trying to hide. So all of us should be writing. And what they do is they kind of have this virtual writing group that is really, really kind of cool. That basically you go on Teams and you write, but you don't interact with the other people. So it's just kind of an accountability thing. She called it a body doubling group, where basically you just have some other people out there that you can kind of see and hear, I guess, if you need to. But it's a great way to keep ourselves accountable for all that writing we need to be doing. So I'll drop her name down in the chat here as well. And if you're interested in reaching out to Rebecca Barrett Fox, she will give you an invitation to that Teams writing group. Next week, I always announce next week's event before we start this week's event. We'll be having a teaching chat. Teaching chat is kind of like TLC office hours. We can kind of come in and talk about things, but I always have kind of a theme that I want to kind of pique people's brains about and kind of crowdsource information about. And next week will be kind of the culmination of a 3-event mini series in our TLC professional development series this fall semester, where we're looking at AI. Last week, we had an event by Sydney Alexis and Teresa Merrick Cassidy about student motivation to use AI. Today, we've got another one on AI that I'll introduce in a second. Next week, we're going to unpack those events. So what we'll do is we'll kind of share our own thoughts, our own feelings, how we're using it in our teaching. I'll have some questions that I want to kind of bounce off all of you. So next week will be kind of the culmination of that little mini series. And today, kind of the middle part of that mini series, I'm so excited that we have Alex Shanahan. Alex is last year's Kaufman Chair for University Distinguished Scholars. This is the highest honor in teaching that K-State gives, so we're very excited. And what happens is he is now a University Distinguished Teaching Scholar for Life. That's the title that he will carry the rest of his career. Very cool thing. And I had the pleasure to attend his Kaufman lecture at the end of the spring semester, in which he talked about a project he had done looking at faculty and their perceptions of AI in teaching. And as I was talking to Alex about before this event, the Q&A went on for like an hour afterwards. There was just a lot of vibrancy in that. And I was like, well, we need to continue that conversation in the PD series this year. So with no further ado, Dr. Shanahan, the floor is yours, and I'm so excited for your talk today.
Thank you, Don, and thank you for this opportunity to share some of our research with colleagues, fellow instructors at K-State, and thank you to everyone for taking the time to tune in to hear this presentation. So let me just share my screen and just go from there. Let's see if this works. Okay. Is it working? Perfect. Okay, so as Don said, this is a presentation that essentially was developed as part of the Kaufman Chair project. And the idea was to understand the impact of generative artificial intelligence and GPTs on instruction at K-State. And I know I was the one who's kind of leading and presenting the findings, but this is a result of a collaboration with some colleagues here, and Jason Berthold, Logan Britton, and Lonnie Hobbs. So we all worked on this together and contributed to this. So let me just set the stage by maybe I can minimize this. So let's see if I can move this around. There you go. So let me set the stage by trying to kind of motivate how I came up with the idea, and hopefully everybody can relate to this and you'll see yourself in this. So what this graph is illustrating is that Google Trends search interest in ChatGPT in US. So this is essentially the line, the blue line that shows the number of times that people went online to Google and searched ChatGPT. And it's in relation, so this vertical axis in relation to the highest point. So as you can see, the highest point, and this is up to April of 2025. So April 25 was the highest point, and this is in relation to that highest point. You can see the searches. Starting from October 9th or October of 2022, when the ChatGPT was launched, and then going all the way up to April 25. What I also did is went and put some kind of markers on times where the OpenAI introduced the next model. So then as you look at this line, if you look closely, you can see some trends here. So you see some peaks, some valleys, a small dip, a large dip, peak, valley, small dip, large dip, and then another peak. So I'll give you a second to try to guess what might be driving that pattern. And it's pretty amazing, really, once you kind of see what I did. I just put some markers here. So those periods signify the summer break, winter break. So you can see the peaks are really there right before the fall semester is over. So the finals weeks, right? And then, oh, sorry, the spring here. And then we go to summer break. Then it starts picking up. Then we have a small dip, big dip. So winter break, big dip. Anybody can guess what the small dip is? Thanksgiving holiday, right? So then we come back to the spring semester. You can even see the spring break here somewhere, the small dip, and then it kind of goes up again right before the finals, and then it slows down, and then the same thing, large dip, small dip, Thanksgiving break, come back. So really what this shows is who are the people who are driving the most of these search interests, and also related to that, obviously, the use of ChatGPT. So since the patterns are aligned with the school year, the semesters, so it's not that crazy to assume that the student body is the largest population that is driving the interest here. And then, somewhere here in kind of spring, fall of 22, spring of 23, I started hearing about this. And then here in the fall of 23, I really start getting emails from colleagues and alarming. It's like, have you heard about this? The students, everybody's using this, all of that. Then we start seeing the news reports all over the internet and news channels. There's some alarming news like, okay, what's going to happen to higher education? And then there were some that are like, okay, is this really the downfall of education and critical thinking, or this is going to just change it, not destroy it? Is it a threat? Maybe it's not. We still have some honor code and instructional resources, etc. So if you are an instructor, if you're a teaching faculty, like most of us here, I was starting to get vertigo from all of this news and all of these talks. And, being an ag economist, I said, okay, well, let's just attack this like we attack normal problems. We just collect data and try to understand what's happening, and let's look at our immediate environment. Let's try to first understand what's going on at K-State. How is this new technology affecting the coursework, the classes, etc. in our immediate environment. Obviously, we understood that the impact will be different depending on types of classes, types of subjects, etc. So we really wanted to see, okay, what's really going on? What do my colleagues, what are the other people in my immediate surrounding K-State seeing? Are they seeing this end of the world scenario as some of the news try to portray it, or as there's no significant impact? So this led us to come up with this study, understanding the impact of GAI and GPT on instruction at KSU. What is the nature of the impact as perceived by faculty? And how is the perceived impact different based on instructor and class characteristics? So instructor characteristics will include knowledge of GAI, training in GAI, their own personal use, and then the class characteristics will include the subject, level, mode, type of activities, and other characteristics. So the way we approached this study, we designed a survey targeting KSU teaching faculty. The survey included demographic questions, the college, department, age, teaching experience of the faculty, GAI knowledge and use. So are faculty using it in the teaching, non-teaching? How often do they use? What type of GAI they use? Have they received training in GAI, etc.? The class characteristics, what types of classes they teach, the level, size, mode, online, hybrid, in person, activities that they use in these classes, assignments, etc. And then the perceived GAI impact. As they see the impact, do they see the GAI and GPT having a positive impact, negative impact in those classes that they teach? What is the magnitude of the impact? What is the nature of impact? What are the different areas of the impact? Do they have any strategies that they use to harness the positive impact or mitigate the negative impact? Do they have any policies, etc.? So really, we wanted to learn what's going on. What do our colleagues see in their classroom? And then we also asked them about future outlook on GI impact and their interest in training. The survey was implemented using Qualtrics in fall of 24, and chances are many of you in this Zoom call have received the link and completed. The response was overwhelmingly positive. To kind of put things in perspective, from the Office of Assessment, we received a list of teaching faculty, and it had about 1,304. But we think the actual population is probably less than that, because once we launched the survey to these faculty, we received some emails from folks saying that they don't teach. So it's probably less than that. So the actual sample, the completed surveys that we got back was 652 teaching faculty. That's about 50% of total population, which is pretty good. And really, we were very, very pleased and humbled by how our colleagues kind of came forth and completed the survey, and even kind of went a step further, taking the time to write some emails and providing even more feedback beyond the survey. So we have, as a result of the survey, we have information on about 1,800 KSU courses that are taught by 652 faculty across 11 colleges and 59 departments. To give you the idea on the representativeness of the sample, so this chart shows the colleges on a vertical line, the percentage of teaching faculty in each college. The purple shows the actual population, and then the blue shows the representation in our sample. So as you can see, we have a pretty good representation in agricultural. So it's very similar to the total proportion of faculty, the proportion of respondents in our sample. The architecture, we have a little bit overrepresentation in arts and sciences. Business, we got pretty much the same education, a bit overrepresented health and human services. And then we have some underrepresentation in veterinary medicine and a few others. Okay, so one of the questions was, I believe the current impact of GAI on higher education is significant, extremely significant, significant, somewhat significant, and insignificant. And this is the breakdown of the responses from our sample. About a third of the respondents said they believe it's insignificant, the current impact. About 21% said extremely significant, 5% significant, and then 42% somewhat significant. And then we also looked at the breakthrough of this across colleges. Let me see. Okay, I think this is better. So you can see how the responses are distributed across colleges. So leadership tends to have the higher proportion of folks that think it's extremely significant, arts and sciences, business, and then ag, technology, aviation, engineering. So you can see some that say it's not significant, but more than half think that it's either extremely significant, significant, or somewhat significant. Then we asked whether the respondents have had training in GAI, and about quarter of our respondents said that they had training. We asked if they use GAI in teaching or in their personal life. About half said they do use, the other half said they don't. We asked if they have policy in the syllabi regarding the GAI, and about 70% indicated that they have policies. Then we ask if they have strategies, policies, procedures to harness the positive impact of GAI. About 40% said they do. And then when we ask if they have policies to mitigate the negative impact, about 60% said they do. So most of the folks at the moment are focused on mitigating the negative impact through the strategies and policies in their classes, then harnessing the positive, although about 40% said they have policies to harness the positive impact. So then we wanted to understand what is the nature of the impact of GAI and GPT on instruction as perceived by faculty. And this was probably one of the surprising results, because remember, this survey is asked in fall, October of 24. So ChatGPT has been around for a couple of years at this point, and you saw all the news and all the hype about it. And then there was some indication, I don't know, some studies maybe that indicated that about 86% of students use GPT by this time, but about 59% of our faculty said they perceived no impact of this technology in their classrooms. And then 15% said both positive and negative impact. About 12% said they see only positive. About 14% said they see only negative. And then again, a breakdown across colleges. Business administration seems to have the largest impact, both positive, negative. And then going down all the way, so you can see arts and sciences has the largest positive only impact. And then it looks like the business administration has the largest negative only impact. So then we asked about the nature. So what's the primary nature of the positive or negative impact of GAI on students in your class? Improved learning, as far as the positive impact goes, improved learning, improved creativity, were the top mentioned positive impact. And then when we ask what's the primary nature of the negative impact, academic dishonesty was mentioned by about half of the respondents. And then impede learning objectives, reduce student effort, etc. Then we wanted to know what is the nature of the perceived impact based on instructor characteristics, specifically instructors' own use and then instructors' training. So on this graph, you can see it's essentially the level of the impact, only positive, both positive, negative, only negative, and no impact. The purple bars show the impact level of faculty that use GAI, either in teaching or in their non-teaching activities. And then the blue bars show the responses of faculty who do not use GAI. And there are two things to note here. One is that the faculty who do not use tend to see less impact than the ones who do use themselves. And then also the faculty who use themselves tend to see more positive impact compared to those who don't use. And then those who don't use tend to see more negative impact compared to those who use. And the picture is somewhat similar based on whether or not faculty had training in GAI. Those who had training tend to see more impact. Those who didn't tend to see less impact. And then those who had training tend to see more positive impact relatively to those who reported not to have any training.
So, Alex,
Yes.
a question we had gotten a couple minutes ago in the chat, and it's relevant here too, is when you asked if they had training, do you know what the training was? Was there a definition provided or options kind of provided? Like, do you have any sense of what that training was?
Yes, that's a great question. We actually asked them the type of training. So it's the workshop, is it the course, certificate course, is it in-person seminar, whatever. So we had those responses, but we also asked them about the extent of the training, the number of hours they had. So we had that as well.
Okay, and for here it's just dichotomous. Did they have any or none?
Yeah,
Okay, excellent.
I didn't want to. I mean, being an economist, I had a temptation to put as many graphs and charts in this presentation as I could. But I appreciate the fact that not everybody is an economist. But that's a great question, and we have some of these details, and we're trying to do some more nuanced analysis of this data. And if anybody's interested, by all means, reach out to me, and we can kind of dig deeper in some of these things.
All right, thank you.
Then we wanted to see what is the nature of the perceived impact of GAI and GPT on instruction based on class characteristics. And first we looked at class levels. So picture is relatively similar, but a couple of things to note here that it seems like freshmen and sophomore tend to have more negative only impact and less positive only, compared to let's say the seniors and graduate level. So graduate level, for sure, we have more positive only and less negative only, but then both positive and negative seems to be the same across the different levels. But I think one kind of implication of this, that moving forward, as this freshman and sophomore class moves through the pipeline, we'll start seeing some of that impact in higher classes as well. Based on class mode, so online tends to have more negative only impact. In person, it's relatively similar, both positive, negative, and both. And then a hybrid, a relatively less negative impact, but both positive and negative is high. And this is really kind of what we would expect to see from my discussions with colleagues who teach online courses. They're very alarmed about the ChatGPT and use of this outside of the classroom. And then we wanted to ask them about the perceived the impact based on primary activity in the class. And the way this question was asked, we asked them to rate the level of, let's say if somebody said we see positive impact, then we say, okay, rate the level of positive or the magnitude of the positive impact based on activities from 0 being no impact or very little impact to 10 being extreme impact. So you can see like programming and software. As first positive impact goes, programming and software has the highest positive impact. Applied, experiential, writing, discussion, quantitative, experiment, art, performance, and design. And when we look at the negative side, art performance is the highest negative impact, writing, discussion, applied, experiential, etc. So then when we look, for example, at programming, it becomes kind of clear that in programming, they tend to see, obviously, they see both positive and negative, but they tend to see more positive than negative impact. Quantitative, similar, they tend to see more positive than negative. Experiential, lab, more positive than negative. Design, more positive than negative. And those are the things that intuitively we would kind of expect to these types of results. Excuse me. As far as the negative impact, art performance has more negative than positive impact. Writing has more negative than positive impact. Discussion, and then applied experiential is kind of same level of both positive and negative impact. Then we ask perceived impact by assignment. Where do you see the positive, negative impact of GI being more visible in your class that you teach? And we ask them to select all that apply. Projects and homeworks tend to be the assignments that the positive impact is most visible. But then the homeworks and projects also tend to be the assignments where the negative impact is most visible. And the only shift is that now the homework had the highest negative impact and the project second highest. In terms of positive impact, projects have the highest and the homework's the second highest. So then we asked, what is the faculty perception of the future impact of GAI and GPT on higher education? And this is the response we got. So the purple bar shows the perception of current impact. And then the blue bar shows the perception of the future impact. As you can see, about 1/5 of the respondents said the current impact is extremely significant. But then the future impact is about 1/2 of them. They think it will be extremely significant. So what this really tells us that moving forward, faculty expect the impact only to increase. So this brings us to a summary. So 41% of respondents perceive impact of GI in their classes, positive, negative, and both. 59% perceive no impact. Instructor use and training in GI affects the perception of the impact. And we think that part of the reason that close to 60% perceive no impact is that about 1/2 of them don't use the GAI themselves. So if you don't use, it'll be harder for you to notice the impact or be able to discern what the use or non-use. Projects and homeworks are top assignment types where the impact is more visible, both positive and negative. The nature and the level of impact varies across class levels, modes, disciplines, and primary activities. We see more positive impact in classes where primary activities involve design, programming, software, quantitative and experiential activities, and negative impact is more significant in classes with primary activities involving art, performance, writing, and discussion. I would imagine now with some of these newer models with pictures and then the video, we'll start seeing more of the negative impact in art as well as in writing. So some of these visual the picture and video models are becoming just as good as the writing models. So we'll start seeing some of that. 26% believe that GAI's current impact on higher education is significant or extremely significant. 86% believe that GAI's future impact on higher education will be significant or extremely significant. Majority have GAI policies, but more respondents currently use strategies to mitigate negative impact than to harness the positive impact. More than half of the respondents expressed extreme interest in GAI training. And just to remind, about 3/4 responded that they didn't have any training. So there are some concluding thoughts that I want to end with. The field of GAI is rapidly evolving, and this study is just a snapshot of not even the current situation, so a year ago. So I'm sure if we had to run this survey again this fall, the picture will be different. I think we'll see more impact. We'll see more use by faculty. And the wide range of tools are becoming available to society, and our students must be ready to operate effectively in the new reality. If they want, they don't want, that's the world they're stepping into. And they need to be ready to operate in that environment, in that reality. The impact of GI tools on higher education and student learning outcomes will depend on two factors: the condition of use, essentially the pedagogical strategies, the policies and guidelines that we as instructors provide and as university provide, and the character of a person using this. And this is not new. This is same with everything, right? Every other technology. When internet just came in, the Wikipedia, the citing, the citations, the way students are cited, or the proper attribution depends on the conditions, the policies, etc., that institutions have, but also the character of the person using it as well. And the thing to kind of keep in mind is that we as instructors and institutions have control over the first one, but we don't have much control over the second one. So I think we should try to see how we can provide these strategies and policies to maybe facilitate the responsible use and to really harness that positive impact while mitigating the negative. And then, there will still be some folks who might use it unethically, or who might kind of take advantage of those tools. And then the last point is that GI tools also have a potential to enhance the teaching effectiveness of instructors. And this is probably the part that we haven't really talked as much. I think a lot of hype has been on the student use and the issues related to the negative impact, etc. But I think there's a significant potential of these technologies to enhance the teaching effectiveness of faculty. And I think we should probably, as a group, talk more and discuss how some of these technologies can be used to make us better teachers for our students. And I will be happy to share the different ways that I use in my teaching, but I'll be curious to hear from colleagues how they use and what they have discovered in terms of how these tools can be helpful in their own teaching. This brings me to the end of the presentation, and it looks like we have some time for the discussion or Q&A. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and just hear your thoughts on things that we just presented.
Thank you. If you want, you can stop your share, and then we can have kind of that gallery review for the Q&A. Thank you. So So one of the questions I kind of immediately have is, a lot of people are talking about we have to equip our students with AI skills and those sorts of things. And often when pressed, I feel like that's more of a platitude that we feel we should be saying due to the zeitgeist of the times than an actual action we should be taking. So I was wondering if you could provide some actual operational things that we should be doing with our students to teach them to be successful in an AI world.
Yeah, now that's a really, really good question. So there are a couple of ways to look at this, right? So one way to look at this is saying, okay, well, let's pick the latest, best technology and teach our students how to use that, right? So that's one way to teach them. But what is latest and best today will be old news in 3 months or 6 months from now. So the point that I'm trying to make is that the life cycle of this technology development is much faster than the life cycle of a course design. So when we design a course, let's say we get together and say, let's design this AI tool course that will teach our students the latest, the best technology, how to use it. By the time we design it and by the time we're done offering it, some of the tools that we chose that were the latest might be already dated, right? So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. And with that in mind, I think probably what we can do is just teach them how to discover some of these tools, how to stay up to date about these tools, and then how to kind of experiment and learn on their own rather than designing a course to teach them about them. I think that might be more effective because we won't be able to catch up. And then on the other side, we can also help teach them what are the responsible uses to distinguish between the responsible ethical use from unethical use. Because from my discussions with students, I have heard from some students who say, we're really good students. And they say, I don't use it. And the reason I don't use it is because I'm afraid of making a mistake because just by not knowing what is the right or wrong way of using it, I will do something that will get me into trouble. I'd rather not use it, right? So to essentially to get more specific, to answer your question, what are the specific things we can do? What I do in my class, and I have to update this for this next iteration, I've prepared a table of what are the acceptable uses with examples and what are the unacceptable uses. And this is specific to my class because what I teach and the way I teach. So I have specific examples. So I say, okay, here's what you can use the different tools. You can use it for going out and searching for a lot of information, synthesizing it, and then coming up with summaries, maybe ideation, maybe coming up with the first outline, and then doing for proofreading and all of this. And then here are the examples of use that is unacceptable. You cannot just go and say, okay, here's the multiple choice, give me the right answer, or here's the write me 300 word essay about this problem and then take it and copy paste it. So what I'm trying to do is level the plane as much as I can for my students. So at least now all of them have we are all on the same page in terms of what is acceptable, what is not. So some students who want to use it in an acceptable way, an ethical way, they can use it and not be afraid that they get into trouble. And then those who might consider using it in an ethical way, they know that, okay, we shouldn't do this, right?
So
Now,
I
yeah,
appreciate and agree with all of that. So a question that I sometimes do get from students though is why should we learn to do anything that AI can do for us? So for instance, if AI can do it, why isn't it ethical to let the AI do it? Why do we have to do this thing? I've had a student in the extreme say we shouldn't have to write anymore because ChatGPT can write everything I want to write. I shouldn't have to write anymore. So I'm kind of wondering, like, we have these big existential questions that are kind of coming at this, and I'd love to hear you kind of offer some thoughts on this. I don't know what the right answers are, but I'd love to
yeah,
hear your thoughts.
I think that's an excellent question, and there's no right or wrong answer to this. I think that it's more nuanced. We have to look at it in more nuanced ways. There will be certain areas where some of the skills will become essentially pointless for us to learn some of those skills because machines will do it much more effectively. But then there will be some areas where we'll need to understand the underlying process. Like, for example, writing is one of the things. I mean, to answer if a student says, why should I learn to write if AI can do it for me? You know, writing is essential for communication, but it's not just kind of passing the message. It's also in the process of writing, it helps us clarify our thinking, right? It helps us organize our thoughts in our head. It helps us understand the topic ourselves better in the process of writing. It's not just kind of communicating the message. So that's one of the reasons. But then on the other hand, there might be some skills that. So for example, I saw this cartoon, and you probably have heard this expression when they say you won't be competing with an AI, you will be competing with the person who is using AI better, right? And I saw this cartoon. There's a horse, and the farmer was telling the horse, you won't be competing with the tractor, you will be competing with another horse who will be using the tractor better than you, you know. And some things, some skills that come to mind, you know, for example, it will be really, really hard for real-time translators to compete with AI. If I'm a real-time translator, if that's what I'm doing, already there technologies exist that you can just talk to your smartphone, it will translate in real time in 120 languages. How do you compete with that as a real-time translator? Maybe interpreter, maybe like written translation is a different story, but there are some skill sets and some activities that, you know, there won't be no point. It's like in blacksmithing, right? As the Industrial Revolution came in, you start seeing fewer and fewer blacksmiths. Blacksmiths where it was a solid occupation, right? Back in those years, it was a solid occupation, highly demanded, very demanded skill. But as Industrial Revolution came, you start seeing fewer and fewer blacksmiths because the blacksmith, the traditional blacksmith had hard time competing with the machines who could do the same thing much faster and better and more accurate, etc. But then what happens is the blacksmithing became kind of this niche artisan thing. And there will be some skills that will become like that, you know, that you will still have some humans who will have this niche artisan skills who will doing some of that real-time translation for certain situations, etc. Right? Where, for example, where emotion is really, really important to communicate and things, or you just don't want to hear the machine doing the talking, you want to hear a person talking or something. But to answer your question, yes, you know, there are some skills that you probably won't have to become good at because you won't be able to compete with the technology, but there are some skills that are essential for your success. And this will be case by case basis. It will be hard to connect the dots looking forward. Only after the time passes, we'll look back and say, you know, some of the skills where we might make some guesses, like, you know, and in quantitative, like things where you have little need for physical world, like, you know, in quantitative trading, finance, accounting, and things like that, where they just deal with numbers. Machines will become so good at it, you know, the translation, real-time translation and things like this. But then there will be some areas where you will need. Does that answer your question, though?
I don't know that I don't know that there was an answer to my question, but I appreciate you sharing some thoughts. Andy, I see your hand.
Yeah, so thanks very much for this talk. This was interesting. Piggyback, there's so much here that we could spend a long time talking about. But to piggyback off of Don's question, one of the big concerns that I have, you know, students say like, oh, well, AI can do this, why should I? There's a huge part, and there's a lot of research coming out now that cognitive skills are on rapid decline. because of offloading your mental load into AI. And I'm a linguist, so your analogy of the real-time translation, it's like, yeah, you can have a translation service, AI automatically translate things in real time. And that probably is something that's we're going to lose translators. But learning another language has a host of benefits that go far beyond the utilitarian, like being able to provide a language translation or being able to communicate with somebody in another language. So I have a lot of concerns about this aspect of like looking at just like the task and like how do we encourage students to use their brains so that they're thinking deeply and developing the critical skills that they need? Because my concern is that down the line, we're going to have AI functioning and the population not going down. If you've seen the movie Idiocracy, anyone, this is kind of like my concern. And so I just wonder how you would respond to that aspect.
Yeah. Again, I think you're absolutely right. There are different uses of things. So for example, we can make the same case with the calculator, right? So students say, well, why should I learn to do the square roots and whatever else, integrals, because calculator can do it much faster. And then we can make a case that, learning calculus and math will improve your abstract thinking abilities and that will make you, smarter. The same way, just as you said, why should I learn a foreign language if the cell phone can do it, can translate it for me faster, but, learning foreign language can expose you to different ideas and cultures and things.
It also gives you an ability to check that translation, right? Like if you know how to do basic math, you can ensure that what the calculator is giving you is of quality and not just rely on it without thinking.
In some cases, it will become important to check it. In some cases, you don't even want to check it. Just like as with translation, in some cases, you just don't want that nuance. In some cases, you might need the nuance. With language, if all you need to do is just get the message from point A to point B, they just kind of put together a quick email, a coherent email that will do it. But if you want to take notes during the presentation to kind of organize your own thoughts, or maybe you just writing to organize your own thoughts and make sense. So then you will need that, right? If you're learning math to come up with the next application on a calculator, whatever else, you need to know that. But if you're using it just to quickly do some quick calculation, so I think it's going to become more specialized. So just some tasks will become automated and some human skills will become redundant. So then we'll say, okay, so yeah, for example, and I see some of the colleagues who are probably same generation that I am. Growing up, how many phone numbers you could remember by heart? Probably handful, a dozen maybe. How many do you remember by heart now? Yeah. So
barely my own.
there you go. There you go. So some things, and you can make a case that remembering a long phone number is important because sometimes you might not have a phone next to you. You might lose you, and you need to call a loved one or somebody, or just remembering a lot of numbers is good for your brain. We can make those cases, but on practical level, how many of us remember it? So I think we will see similar things happening with learning languages, with math, with writing. So some aspect of it will get lost just simply because the need won't be there,
So that's an interesting, the phone number example is interesting because Marcia McNutt, the president of the National Academies, was here yesterday for the president's Distinguished Lecture Series. And in the technical seminar she gave yesterday morning, she used that example of remembering phone numbers. And it strikes me as not at all the same thing. So remembering phone numbers and putting them in my cell phone is an augmentation or an extension of an existing human capability, my memory being augmented by the phone. But a lot of the uses of AI that people talk about, writing things, doing the translation, and so on, aren't augmenting human capabilities so much as they are just replacing them, just taking the human out. Things like AI tutors and other things. They just, as a teacher, they cut me out of the equation. I'm no longer needed. So I'm curious if anybody has thought about that, because calculators, you can make the same case. They augment my ability to do math, but they don't replace it. I still have to work the calculator. And so I'm not sure how good of an analogy that is, and I'm not sure how good of an argument for the use of AI in education that actually is.
Just to add on to that, I was thinking the same thing with the blacksmith example, because we have engineers, right? Like, and so blacksmithing is a very specialized thing, but there are certain understandings that we continue to have in humanity to understand how things work and how to build things and how to make things. And so it's changed how we're making things, but humans are still involved in the thinking and creating and developing, unlike with AI.
You know, Aaron, I was thinking, you know, when people talk about the calculator, we've heard Camilla Roberts talk about that. Alex talked about it a little bit earlier today. We talked about, well, the calculator came along and people got all concerned about it, but it just helped us do more, better math. I do think it's less this capacity because AI can do for me. And one of the things that I do struggle with, and we're going to have a teaching chat next week. I'll take this opportunity to remind it, and we'll get it deep into some of these questions. I'm becoming more and less comfortable with AI as I learn more about it and I learn more about what it can do. And I wonder, you know, I'm using it to augment myself, right? So I critique what AI gives me, I reframe, I use it as ideas, I kick out, you know, 3/4 of what it tells me, all those kind of things. But I have a capacity to do that. And I'm worried about, are we going to have a generation that didn't build that capacity and therefore is not able to actually critically evaluate what the AI gives it and has to accept it? Because the AI is rapidly exceeding what we can do. So, you know, I went to one of these workshops a little bit ago and they said, you know, the AI out now, the ChatGPT section out now has like the synaptic capacity of a human, but the next one will have the synaptic capacity of a dolphin. You know, it's about to exceed us. And it's faster, it's smoother, it's more aesthetic in a lot of different ways. And I do get concerned that some of those analogies placate us a little bit and don't necessarily get us thinking about what the consequences of having this be part of our, you know, I'm thinking my kids, part of my kids' upbringing and part of what they do and don't do in college as a result of having these tools at their fingertips. And a tool by definition helps me to do work. I don't know if the tool needs me. And I think that's going to be something we'll have to see. Um, and we're out of time. So I'm hoping we're going to get into those questions a little more existentially next week because I'm terrified and happy to use AI all at the same time. And I definitely want to hear more about this. So next week we do not have a presenter. We'll have some questions that I want to pose to the crowd and hear what people think. So please come back next week and we can continue this conversation. But in the meantime, Dr. Shanahan, thank you so much for your presentation today. I'll remind you that we have we'll archive this. This will be up on our website. You can share with colleagues. I'll post event survey that will make available. We put information in the TLC hub that is available for you. You can get a professional development certificate, all those kind of things. But hopefully we'll see you next week for our TLC chat. Thank you all for spending some time with us today. Bye, y'all.
Thank you, everybody.